Mr. R wanted us to learn, and I, Sarah Davis,
And I, Gabe Sarah,
have learned to an A level. The first chapter is Intro to Chemistry, and I learned that chemistry is the study of composition of matter and the changes of matter, and that matter is anything that has mass and takes up space, and that chemistry affects all aspects of life.
And I learned that there are 5 different areas of chemistry. There's physical, organic, inorganic, analytical, and biochemistry. In chapter 2, we learned about the 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas.
Also, extensive and intensive properties, and an extensive property is a property that depends on the amount of matter in the sample, and an intensive property is the property that depends on the type of matter in a sample and not the amount of matter. Are we at chapter 3? Chapter 3, we learned about the scientific notation and how to use it, which is a given number is written as a product of 2 numbers and a coefficient and 10 raised to the power.
And I learned how we can use accuracy and precision when doing experiments and how they differ from each other. In chapter 4, we learned all about the structure of an atom, and we learned that it makes up everything in our world and how it was first thought of by Democritus.
And that the atom is the smallest particle of an element, and it retains its identity in a chemical reaction. Chapter 5 was electrons in atoms, and we learned about the history of the atomic theory and the size of the atom.
And we also learned about the different energy levels that they hold in the atoms and how they orbit each other. In chapter 6, we learned about the periodic table and how it is set up by the properties of the element, and we learned pretty much everything there is to know about that.
Yeah, we just learned about how it was organized and the type. There's 3 types of elements.
In chapter 7.
And in chapter 7, ionic and metallic bonding, we learned about ions and valence electrons.
We learned how the different amount of valence electrons can, they show what kind of bond you can have, either ionic or metallic bonds. In chapter 8, we learned about covalent bonds, single, double, and triple. And they're all different.
And we learned about the information that a molecular formula provides and the electron dot structures. In chapter 9, chemical names and formulas, we learned about cations and anions and how they represent elements.
And we also learned about compounds and polyatomic ions and how to use their prefixes when writing them out. In chapter 10, we learned how you can measure things by either weight, volume, or count, and we use all of those in our daily lives.
Yeah, and we learned about the mole and the percent composition. In chapter 11, chemical reactions, we learned about the skeleton equation and just different equations and coefficients and the types of chemical reactions.
And we also learned how to write chemical equations and how we can write them when things change and when things lose an electron or gain an electron. And that concludes our presentation.
Nicely done. Let's hear it for them.